Okay, we've got a green light here, ready to go. Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Tuesday, December 17, 2019 meeting of the Edina City Council. Roll call, please. Ms. Allison?
Member Fisher?
Here.
Member Staunton?
Here.
Member Brindle? Here. Member Anderson?
Here.
Mayor Hovland?
Here. For those of you in the audience that would care to join the council in saying the Pledge of Allegiance, please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a form of meeting agenda in front of us this evening. Is there anyone on the council or Manager Neal wish to modify the agenda at all? Hearing nothing, is there a motion to approve the meeting agenda as shown?
So moved.
Second. Got a motion and second to approve the meeting agenda as shown. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. We're going to move on to community comment next, and we've got a little bit, it's a bifurcated sort of community comment situation we have this evening. I'm going to turn to Manager Neal first because we're going to do, we had a presentation at our last meeting, I'll back up a second, about from staff, from one of our police officers, one of our sergeants, about some of the work that they've been doing on creating a body-worn camera policy. And we're going to start that. We're going to fund it and do it and do the installation work, I think, on the cameras and the systems next year. Our officers, towards the end of 2020, will start wearing them. But Manager Neal will speak preliminarily before we move into community comment on body-worn camera policy.
Thank you, Your Honor, members of council. This proposed community comment section tonight is in addition to our regular community comment. We wanted to segment it to draw more attention to it. State statute requires local governments who are adopting policies with regards to how their body-worn cameras will work or how they'll be handled inside their police departments, requires those local governments to provide an opportunity for residents to provide feedback on the front end of the policy making process. So that's what we're doing with this tonight. We would like to run it the same way that the council runs community comment at every council meeting. So there's a time limit. We receive the comments. We don't necessarily respond to them tonight, but we make a record of them and we do respond to them at some point during the process. So that's what we'd like to do tonight and draw some special attention to that process. We're also taking input on a couple different online sources. But that's what we'd like to do.
All right, very good. And I assume that the proposed policy has been online for people to see, and there was probably a copy of it out in the lobby for folks to look at. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to come forward and make a comment regarding the proposed policy on body-worn cameras for our police officers? All right, seeing no one coming forward, I'll move on to regular community comment. Is there anyone in the audience this evening that wishes to address the council on a matter of concern to them that's not otherwise on the agenda this evening? Oh, yes, ma'am. You were blocked by the by this computer screen, so I didn't see your arm come up. Please, welcome.
Hello, my name is Ellen Scousebow, and I live at 5805 Concord Avenue, South. I just, while I'm here, wanted to comment on the lack of pedestrian safety in the area surrounding Southdale Mall and at like Valley View and 62 and Valley View and 66. It's been this way for years. There's hardly any sidewalks, and I'm not sure if there's any crosswalks in the area. And especially on the roads surrounding Southdale Mall, drivers go really fast. And drivers go really fast even in the parking lots. I was almost run down in a parking lot recently in broad daylight. That area really desperately needs sidewalks and crosswalks.
Okay.
And there's people living in the apartments around there who can't safely walk in their own neighborhood.
You're thinking of to the north of across 66th? when you say that? They can't safely walk in their own neighborhood, or are you thinking south of 66?
Well, where Valley View and 66 intersect,
Okay.
and where Valley View and 62 intersect, and the streets surrounding Southdale Mall.
Okay. Well, there are sidewalks at Valley View and 66, I think at least on the north side, because I know I've walked that all the way.
It's not connected.
But not on the south side by the, from Valley View to France.
Right.
There's no sidewalk on the south side.
Right.
That's
and
right.
There's not adequate crosswalks.
I agree with you on that. Okay, let us take a look at that and pass that on to the Traffic Safety Review Committee folks and our PED people. Thank you, Ms. Cogbo. Anyone else wish to address the council on a matter of concern to them? All right, and then we'll move on to the city manager's response to community comments that were raised at our last meeting 2 weeks ago. Manager Neal.
Thank you, Your Honor. We had 3 speakers at our community comment on December 3rd at your last council meeting. One speaker had some concerns and submitted a petition asking the city to not conduct a traffic control experiment on Sunnyside. Staff have had a chance to discuss that concern, and really, unless there's strong advice to the contrary by council, would agree to discontinue considering that proposal. And
Which would mean that there would remain parking on one side, but we wouldn't have a pilot program where we would allow parking on both sides, if I remember correctly.
Correct. We wanted to test both sides. Currently has
Yep.
one side. We would just stick to the
Stick
one
with that
side
policy.
based on the feedback we got from those residents last time.
Okay, good.
We had a request from a resident regarding single-use plastic bags and asked that issue be placed on the EEC's 2020 work plan. That issue has been previously on the EEC's work plan, and they have discussed the topic before, but it is not currently part of the EEC's 2020 work plan. So if that's something the council wishes to do, we would have some discussion about that and discuss it with the EEC about what, if anything, it might displace, and then move forward from there.
All right.
Hasn't there been state legislation preempting it?
There is, but now other cities are going towards the deposit idea,
Oh, okay.
and that has been picking up some speed about if you can't ban them, can you make it more expensive to have them? So that might be an option. And finally, we had a resident who asked that the city be more interested and active in the area of passenger rail, particularly from an economic and an environmental standpoint, and also wanted the council to consider changing our agenda to add an update, a standing update about Fire Station number 3. We do not have, I think that might be something plausible in the future once that project is part of our CIP. I wouldn't recommend that at the moment, though. And that's all that we had for community comment last time.
That prompt any questions from any council members? Okay. We will move on to the consent agenda, and there are, I think, 15 items on the consent agenda. Member Anderson wanted to remove, if memory serves me right, 6F, correct? All right, thank you. And then I'm going to remove 6L to cover a couple of issues involving the Braemar Golf Dome. With the removal of 6F and 6L, is there a motion to approve the balance of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and second to approve the consent agenda with the exception of the removal of 6F and 6L. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion as stated, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. And then 6F, Member Anderson.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. I noted in the request for purchase tonight for the new 2020 Bearcat vehicle that there was over $132,000 raised by contributions to the Edina Crime Prevention Fund. I find that notable and indicative of the kind of support that the community is willing to gather. This was done in very short order, if I'm correct. once the need was determined, the 2004, the existing vehicle, no longer has software which is supported. So these guys are kind of flying blind in there very often. And what I think you note with the use of a vehicle like this, it's not so much an apprehension, but an interdiction. And the way that that vehicle is used when in a crime scene or in a traffic emergency where there are concerns about the driver it's remarkable, because it decreases dramatically the possibility of injury to an officer, or for that matter, the person who might be pulled over, who might be in that car. It calms things down, and there's no danger to anyone. And as well, often the residents are protected at the point of a crime scene. So I find it to be very reassuring that the community can gather so rapidly, so quickly for a matter of this nature.
And for those of you on the crime fund where the funds were raised through, I don't know if either of you have a comment, Member Sutton or Member Brindle, or Chief for that matter.
Mayor and Council, yes, I mean,
Nelson.
it's awesome the way the community came together. The Bearcat has been aging and has been getting more difficult to maintain. The cost of the maintenance fees have been going up annually significantly. And for the community to come together and raise nearly half the money to make this purchase is very humbling.
The only thing I will add is that the Edina Crime Prevention Fund, while it raises significant funds every year and turns around well into the six figures to the police department every year to augment the budget of the police department, the idea of raising money, raising funds to be able to replace the Bearcat actually did not originate in the crime fund itself. It originated by Edina residents who got together and did this and then said to the crime fund, we would like you then to hold the money until the police department is ready to spend it. So appreciate the crime fund being identified and involved as a partner here, but that's exactly what the crime fund is a partner in this. And so I just wanted to paint a picture of the role of the crime fund in this is not as the instigator, but as the helper. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think when the original Bearcat came our way as a regional asset, it came through, it was post 9/11, if I remember correctly, and came as a regional asset through Homeland Security.
Yes.
Through a grant. And so as expensive as these vehicles are, to have folks in our community step up and say we're going to help cover the cost of this replacement vehicle is Member Anderson knows, quite extraordinary, I think, at the level of participation. So thank you to all those residents. Member Anderson, would you care to move that matter?
Yes, I would move, Your Honor, to approve the purchase of the 2020 Bearcat.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion as stated, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. And then with respect to L, I pulled L, Resolution 2019-111, which sets park and rec fees for 2020. I've had a couple of inquiries, actually one conversation at the Golf Dome. These both relate to the Golf Dome. Mr. Vetter is here. Yeah. We saw him on crutches a month or so ago, and he's back on crutches again here after having had another surgery just yesterday.
That's correct, Mayor and Council, yesterday.
Yeah. Well, good luck with this.
It's knee surgery number 11. I'm getting used to it.
So, first of all, I had a call today from a gentleman who works with kids and takes them out golfing in the summertime at the 9-hole course. And he said the kids pay $5 if they're young enough. And now if he takes kids out at night to the Golf Dome, we're on Top Tracer, and it's, what is it, maybe $14 for a half an hour. And he's wondering if any accommodation can be made for kids in the evening. And I don't know how to answer. I didn't know how to answer the question because I don't know how busy it is in the evening and whether we have any latitude on doing something for kids in the community, but that was one question. You could maybe take a look at that after the fact. I don't intend to try to hold this matter up.
Yeah, Mayor, actually, I can give a brief response, and we could look into it further about additional programming. But Mayor and Council, I would recommend at that point our promotional rates Monday through Thursday are, we sell buckets of golf balls Monday through Thursday. Time golf starts Friday, Saturdays, and Sundays. We do a promotional night Thursday evenings, beginning at 4 p.m. For youth and youth only is $8 per bucket then. So about just under a little bit less than half of a normal bucket. So that would be one opportunity that youth would have, would be Thursday evenings from 4 p.m. to close. That would be at an $8 a bucket. We're also looking at, as part of the time golf, looking at if we can do anything with the high school teams as well. I don't know the membership of the group you're talking about, but could be another option that we do explore. But at least we do have one right now on the books that they could do youth golf Thursday evenings, 4 p.m. to close.
Okay. And then the other group, some concern was expressed about were the seniors, who I think pay, if memory serves me right, $8 for a bucket Monday through Thursday noon, or is it all day?
You're correct, Mayor. Monday through Thursday, 7 a.m. to noon. Seniors are $8 per bucket.
Okay. And is that going to be true in the spring too, when we get real busy with spring golf? That's a constant?
Yeah. Our plan right now is to continue on with bucket golf, bucket sales of golf Monday through Thursday. I think at a certain point with the popularity of the Dome, we may look at time golf Monday through Thursday, but our plan right now is to stick with buckets. I think at the time that we would recommend a switch, I could provide a memo to the city manager on why we would take that approach, and he could share that with the council, and we could revisit it at that time.
Yeah, that's actually one of the things I'm concerned about, is that I know the manager wanted the flexibility to go to all-time golf, and if that results in costs significantly escalating to these seniors who are getting so much enjoyment out of the Golf Dome Monday through Thursday noon, I'd be concerned about that, because though we want to run this operation, golf operation, like a business, I think we all do want to be sensitive to the needs of our residents in our community, or help paying for all these assets, and want to make sure they have a chance to enjoy themselves at a reasonable cost. Because I don't think if it gets busy in the spring and we made a decision to go to all-time golf at $14 a half an hour or whatever it is, we'd lose all those guys that this becomes, it's their bridge club in the morning, or it's whatever other people are doing that's interesting, that's affordable in our community. That's their time for socializing and hitting some golf balls too.
You're correct, Mayor. It is a balance between the enterprise operation and providing a recreational amenity to the community. So I think, before we would switch, I'd be happy to provide the manager a memo about our reasons to do so and revisit it at that time. But our plan right now is to stick with Monday through Thursday, the bucket golf.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Hopefully we are successful, that we have to revisit that.
Yeah. Okay. And I know there's a lot of nuance in all of this. You and I have talked about it, but I'll move Resolution 2019-117, which adopts the proposed park and recreational fee schedule for 2020. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of adopting Resolution 2019-117 as shown, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Now we're on to special recognitions and presentations. This is good. We've got some of our friends from MnDOT with us tonight. Amber Blanchard and Andrew Lataya are here from MnDOT to talk a little bit about and give us an update on the I-494 project, which I think, Member Brindle, is it set to start in 2023?
I think you'll hear about that.
Well, I bet we will. And that's from the airport to Highway 169, so it's a project of consequence. Mr. Lataya, Ms. Blanchard, welcome. And Andrew, go ahead.
Sure. I was just going to give a brief introduction, but Mayor, thank you for taking the liberty for me. Again, to be respectful of council's time, I'll introduce Amber Blanchard and Andrew Latoya, who are going to give a brief overview of the MnDOT's 149 Airport to 169 project.
Thank you,
And before you
Andrew.
start, I just want to make sure folks remember that Mr. Lataia was one of the folks from MnDOT that helped make sure that we got the traffic issues resolved in Parkwood Knolls when the bridge on 169 was being redone. So thank you for that.
Much welcome. Thank you.
We can't thank you. Every time you show up, I want to say thanks again. Because we didn't mean for Parkwood Road to be alternate 169, and you helped fix the problem, and Scott McBride as well, the former Metro District engineer. So thanks.
Thank you for that, and appreciate your patience as well.
Well, Ms. Blanchard, welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate being here, members of the council and mayor. It's a pleasure to be here. We're going to go through an agenda we have today, but first, before I do that, I want to say thank you to all of you, especially Council Member Brindle and Mayor Hovland for participating in our project and our study and continuing to do so. We've got a lot of steps yet to go, and we're very appreciative of the help and participation you've given us to date. So thank you for that. So we're going to talk about a few things. Andrew and I are going to tag team a little bit today. We're going to go through the overall timeline, a little bit more of the corridor history, and then we're going to talk through our screening processes that we've been working on with decisions that we're going to come to our Policy Advisory Committee meeting here this Thursday, and the pending corridor vision decisions that need to be made, the remaining timeline for phase 2, and the next steps that we have in the process. So I'll go through a little bit of those here coming up. We're going to talk about the overall project timeline first. Andrew started this process with this study back in 2018 before any money was awarded from the Corridors of Commerce program. And that was a study meant to look at the entire corridor from 169 to the airport. And we've had a number of phases on that, and I'll go through that here in a little bit. We're intending to get through preliminary design here in the rest of 2020 in our environmental documents in 2020, moving into final design in 21, and hopefully construction in 22 or 23. We're a little behind right now, so it's probably going to be more like 2023 for construction. For the corridor history, many of you know, I'm sure, there's been a long history on the 494 corridor beginning in the 90s and even in, earlier than that in the 80s. But there's some significant milestones starting in 2001 with the final environmental impact statement that was done on the corridor from 394 all the way to the Minnesota River. And that really encompassed a vision of one of the projects was built north of near 394 and 62, but really it was a vision that we needed to kind of reevaluate, and that's what Andrew is doing now. And moving on to 2009, there was a rescoping project that really looked at the alternatives within the FEIS footprint and recommended a turbine interchange at 35W and 494. Moving on to 2014, there was a vision that was done for the interchange to really look at a little bit more of the improvements of what a turbine interchange could look like, as well as phasing of that and the Orange Line improvements too. Moving on to 2017, there was the Trunk Highway 62 and 494 congestion relief study, and in that study, MinPass was identified as a viable solution to combat congestion in the corridor. And then, of course, we're up to today's study that we are working on right now. So we talked about a few evaluation processes, some screening processes, phases 1 and 2. Really, those are decision points. In phase 1, what we did was we took these 3 areas, mainline access changes, kind of towards the east end in Richfield and Bloomington, and then looking at the interchange specifically at 82nd to look at what would be viable alternatives in each of those categories. So first we looked at phase 1 really encompassed narrowing down all of our alternatives that we had for the each of these segments into something more manageable and smaller. And we also looked at kind of the same thing for the access changes as well as 82nd. And we moved on beyond that, and we're into phase 2 where we're taking a closer look at what we had narrowed down to. And those Interchange and Mainline and 82nd issues ended up being what Andrew will go into here a little bit further, but I just wanted to introduce those as decision points that still yet need to be made, and we're hoping to bring those to the PAC here on Thursday at our meeting and in future meetings as well. So Andrew's going to take over for a little bit, and then I'll come back.
Thank you, Ms. Blanchard.
All right, Mayor, council members, again, thank you for giving us an opportunity to update the city on the progress of the environmental review process for the corridor. So previously I've shared this slide on the alternatives that moved from phase 1 into phase 2. This slide is for what the detailed technical analysis was done on Mainline. So the options that we were looking at are a general purpose lane option from 169 to the airport, and the other second alternative is a mean pass or the managed lane. Managed lane just is open to the general public outside the peak travel times. Otherwise, it's either HOV, which is high occupancy vehicles, people with more than one person in the car, or a paying traveler if there's a single occupant in the vehicle. So that's what really mean pass is. Always in environmental documents, we're always referring back to the existing conditions as a baseline comparison for all the alternatives that we are looking at. So with the effort from our technical advisory committee, which includes city staff, Andrew Scopioni, Chad Miller are involved as part of the city representation as well, and the rest of us at city staff from adjoining cities. So the results that we have so far and the recommendation that has come from the technical advisory committee is a recommendation to move forward with mean pass as the preferred alternative on the corridor. So this recommendation is going to be considered, I don't want to say voted on, but pretty much voted on by the Policy Advisory Committee, which member Brito is a member of. So that's another avenue that City Council representation is shown in the decision-making process. The reasons why the Technical Advisory Committee recommended mean pass was that that alternative performed better. So there are stars on the right side, as you see those. Person throughput, it performed better than a general purpose lane. So person throughput is the number of people in vehicles that are traversing the corridor. Different from level of service, freeway level of service, which is the traditional method that we use, traffic engineering uses in determining performance on a corridor. Level of service is really counting the number of vehicles that are traversing the corridor. So we're saying mean pass will take more people versus vehicles. The second criteria that mean pass performed better was travel time delay. Travel time delay is, in general, the number of travel hours that commuters are experiencing in a given period of time. Travel time reliability, similarly, mean pass is performing better in that criteria, which is how consistent commuters are traversing the corridor. As they are planning their commutes, how consistent are they able to meet their planned travel times. Transit advantage is the ability for accommodating both buses and commuter buses on the corridor. Mean pass is still performing better on that criteria because even though both alternatives would provide bus-only shoulders on the outside, however, mean pass allows buses to also use the mean pass lane because it's more than one occupant in the vehicle. The other criteria that MinPass performed better was consistency with regional plans. And the subcategories in the consistency with regional plans. So these are the transportation plans that are published by the Metropolitan Council, planning body for the metro area. We did talk already about the transit advantage, congestion-free option. MinPass offers a future congestion-free option. That is, MinPass is used as really a traffic management type of system. So congestion-free today or in the future, MinPass will be consistent in providing that. And again, reliable option. That is also all these subcategories are listed in the regional transportation plan. And therefore, MinPass was meeting all those criteria. That is why the Technical Advisory Committee proposed to recommend MinPass as the corridor alternative.
And would that be the typical, you've shown a bus, a Metro Transit Line bus in the MinPass lane, I think.
Yes.
So my question is, would it be a typical MinPass type lane that we see in the rest of the metro where it's not only buses, but it's motorcycles, it's single occupant vehicles that they want to buy the transponder?
Yeah, that is correct.
By the way, into the system, and then two or more people in a motor vehicle.
Yeah, that is correct.
Those are the different categories.
Yes.
That would be able to use that MinPass lane.
Yes, Mayor. Yeah, it's going to be consistent with all the other MinPass corridors in the system.
So for folks that see the Metro Transit bus in the MinPass lane, it's not just for buses?
No.
Yeah. Okay.
No.
Thank you.
All right. The second decision point that we are moving forward to the Policy Advisory Committee is consolidating, reconfiguring access on the corridor between Lindell and 24th to Portland Avenue. So the traffic analysis that we have done is showing that with the short interchange spacing, existing interchange spacing, that is prone to crashes. So crashes is a safety issue. And what we are showing on the left side, so the tables shows crash rates. The red crash rates that are above average compared to segments of similar character and volumes on them. The current design standards also recommend interchange spacing of at least a mile. Between Lindell and 12th, we have interchange spacings of a quarter mile, the longest being half a mile. So we're seeing both safety concerns due to number of crashes, but also with the short merging distances, it causes backups on the western segment of the corridor between Highway 77 and 35W. So the second criteria that we considered in recommending access reconfiguration was to ensure that the arterial system, the city streets, were not negatively impacted if the reconfiguration was to happen. So this table shows that at the minimum, we would be meeting the existing existing traffic conditions on the arterial system. The orange shows from current analysis where we might slightly be making it worse, but again, as the plan development continues, we will be looking at solutions of how to bring it back to be in line with the existing operation conditions of the system. So the two steps, again, the two decision points that the project team is ready to seek concurrence on is mainline solution, which is MinPass, and the second is access reconfiguration. The other pieces that are yet to be decided on are the interchange type at Portland, and the full vision interchange, which is the 35W494 interchange reconstruction. So for the Portland interchange type, we're currently considering 5 different alternatives, one being the traditional tight diamond that is very common on the corridor. The diverging diamond, DDI, is something that would be similar on 24th Street and 34th, below 494. The Texas U-turn, that's a new one for us, but we did bring it forward as an alternative because of the connectivity, the potential of connectivity it provides, the frontage road connectivity on the local system. The roundabouts, there are a few that have been constructed in the state as well. And the single point urban interchange is something similar to what you see on Penn Avenue. The second remaining decision point that we would seek would be again from the 2014 vision. It was proposed to rebuild 35W and 494 with the turbine or a flyover. So based on the progress of the traffic modeling, we are not ready to present this to the policy advisory committee yet this week, but we are hoping that in January timeframe, that information will be ready, and we'll be seeking a recommendation on that as well. As a sub-study of that interchange, we also considered modifying access at 82nd Street in Bloomington. What we were looking at was elimination of some of the braid bridges that were proposed in the 2014 vision. So again, that information is forthcoming, and I would be happy to come back to the city to give you an update on that progress. So with that, Ms. Blanchard will close it out.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Lataya.
So I have a few more slides left, and then we can take some questions. So I wanted to present the remaining timeline for our decision-making process. This December here, we had our technical advisory committee meeting the beginning of December. We're here today to talk to you about what we've been doing. And then on Thursday, in a couple of days, we have our policy advisory committee meeting to present the exact same information that we're presenting to you today. In January, we will be holding a business listening session for the businesses around the Portland 494 interchange area. That has not been scheduled yet, but we're working on the logistics for that. We will talk to our technical advisory committee about the Turbine Interchange Vision and 82nd, as well as the Portland Interchange as time allows. And then we will be going to Bloomington, Eden Prairie, and Richfield to meet and talk with all the decision points that are remaining in January with them. And then hopefully in February, depending on what our PAC would like to do and when they'd like to meet again, we will be taking the remaining decision points to the PAC at that time. And if we didn't get to the Portland interchange type with our technical advisory committee, we would be doing that in February as well. So once all of our decision points are made, we're really into our third phase of project development with the study, which basically gets into preliminary design and environmental document work. And once that is done, we'll have some other things that will be going on concurrently, including our geometric layout and drawing up what everything will be looking like. We're hoping to get the environmental document signed this summer or early fall, and then we'll be coming back to you at some point in the near future to talk about municipal consent for what we're going to construct. So I just want to put in a plug really quick about our online open house, which is 494openhouse.com. We've got a wealth of information, many of which I already talked about, and that goes a little bit more in depth. So feel free to visit that website as well as our project website at MnDOT. And thank you, and I take any questions.
Good. Ms. Blanchard, thank you. Questions for either Ms. Blanchard or Mr. Lataya from council members or comments? Member Brindle, anything? You might want to comment on the meeting tomorrow. Of course, you could do that later too in council comments, but.
Well, since we're talking about 494, so the 494 Corridor Commission tomorrow morning is hosting its annual legislative breakfast. And so representatives and senators from the state are going to be there, and they're going to hear our pleas for funding and quickness and all sorts of things related to this project. But this is an annual event that is put on by the Corridor Commission, 494 Corridor Commission, to get legislators and city leaders in a room and be able to ask questions and understand how these projects are going to transpire. They do affect every city along that stretch of 494. It affects us from a traffic perspective. It will affect us economically. And so we will have a variety of stakes of interest in this project. So it's an honor to sit in a room with you and be able to banter back and forth and come up with what seems to be the right mix while we're in the room. And then, of course, it's up to you to distill all that and figure it out afterward. But it's a great process.
Thank you. Member Fisher.
So thank you. Could we go back to your slides for just a second? Right, that one. So do all of the options essentially eliminate the entrance and exit at Nicollet? Okay.
Yeah, they do actually. That's one of the decision points that was made early on to remove access from Nicollet and 12th and put it all at Portland.
Yeah, that's what I recall from the last time you were here. And then we talked about this, let's see, the Texas U-turn. So is that still a viable option here that you would be looking at?
It is, yes.
So when I hear the word Texas U-turn, I hear fiddle music. I don't know why. But can you explain like how that works?
Yeah, sure. So very similar to a tight diamond. But if you look at my cursor, it provides an option of cars making that U-turn to go back on the other side of the highway without having to stop for the signal light on top of the ramp. That's the only difference.
Oh, I see. So then you can go past the intersection that is there today, come right back around.
Exactly.
That's really interesting. Okay. Thank you.
How does this project interface with the completion of the project at 35W downtown Minneapolis?
So that project is slated to be completed, the downtown 35W and 94 is slated to be completed in the fall of 2021. And our project, if we're lucky, will be under construction in 23.
Okay. And then depending upon the design elements that you choose, after this process you go through, what's the length of time involved to complete this project, the range of time?
Yeah, that kind of depends on what actually gets constructed in the project. As likely at this point, we're going to be funding a portion of it. We don't have enough funding to do the entire vision. So at least 2 years, likely, maybe even 3, depending on how much of it actually gets constructed.
Okay. And it looks right now like you're going underneath 494 in front of Best Buy there?
Yep, that is a metro transit project, bus transit way that they're constructing, which is on the west side of 35W. This project is proposing another tunnel on the east side of 35W.
Okay, good. That prompt any other questions from council members? Member Brindle?
Just a comment on the project that's happening by Best Buy. It is the Orange Line, which is a BRT line, and there's a transit hub at Best Buy, so it interacts with that transit hub, but it's the Orange Line.
Good. Well, I thank you both for coming this evening and giving us this update and giving us some time to think about some of the project options as well.
All right, thank you for having us.
All right, good. Thank you. And we've got another informational item this evening, and Tom Swenson from our staff, I think, or maybe Director Milner has the matter.
Mayor, members of council, yeah, Tom could probably speak to it a little better than I, but I'll introduce Derek here. I think sometimes we get so focused on making decisions and moving forward, we forget to look back and see some of the great things we've done. So Jessica Wilson and Derek want to present some of the information. Jessica's not here tonight, but it was her idea with Derek to present some of the great enhancements to natural resources out at the golf course with the Academy 9, the driving range, and then the full course. You know, we know all those golf amenities are working very well out there, is what we've heard, but let's share some of the benefits from our natural resources. So Derek Deisel, the senior biologist with SCH, will present a bunch of that information, show a bunch of pictures and some videos. So, Derek?
Yeah, Mr. Deisel, welcome.
Well, thank you. As Chad said, this is really a celebration of your project, and it is a look back.
I think from playing golf out there a lot, from what you see happening over the first year, it's just remarkable. So you really deserve a lot of credit for what's happening.
It is.
So
well, I will extend the credit to
folks see this.
Rebecca and Tom and Ann and Jessica and Ross and Chad. I mean, this is a full effort to incorporate it. And one of the things I want to touch on is most of this is elective. This isn't a regulatory-driven thing. This is a decision that was made by the city with support of staff to include a lot of these amenities, and that's partly why when Jessica and I talked about it, is we wanted the opportunity to make sure it's known that this isn't just complying with a rule or, gee, it would be kind of nice. The city truly went above and beyond typical requirements out here, and we want to demonstrate that and make sure that that's understood. So we are talking about both the Academy 9, the driving range, and then the main course construction. So we are talking from 2015 to 2018 with opening year. This is truly a look back, although projects like these always continue forward. So early in the project, one of the things that was desired is to incorporate some natural resource features. So certainly the ones we've listed here as far as flood storage, managing our wetland buffers, native prairie, Oak Savanna, and wetland mitigation were all things that were identified as finding a way to try to incorporate these. So from a pre-project standpoint, these are some of the issues that were identified before even putting pen to paper on, well, what are we going to do out here? Include frequent flooding and poor drainage. Most of the wetlands out there didn't have adequate buffers. We had a lot of invasive species, particularly in the wooded areas with buckthorn. There was a lot of turf out there that was managed that wasn't necessarily part of the course. That was just, well, golf courses need to have, Kentucky bluegrass everywhere. So there was a lot of space that was managed that didn't need to be. And then just an overall, within the course, a lack of natural areas. Now, certainly Braemar lies in a very high quality natural area, but within the course itself was somewhat lacking. And just to demonstrate that, flooding issues were fairly common at times. It's hard to play on the driving range, and it's hard to get there if the entrance is underwater, for example. Poor drainage certainly was an issue. This is the driving range, and it's a little hard to go pick up balls and make that functional when it's in this state for prolonged periods of time. Most of the wetlands that were out there had very little buffer. This was mowed, so it's a little bit more dramatic than it would normally be, but you can see there's not a lot of space from the water to the fairways. Invasive species were present in portions. It's a great purple plant, but it's purple loosestrife, something we definitely want to try to manage, was out there in a lot of areas. Water quality was somewhat of an issue. If you're playing and you see this, the ball goes in there, you're probably not going to try too hard to find it if you could even see it. So this is some of the issues that we're working with. And then certainly lots of turf. This is at the entrance there, and this is an area that was manicured and maintained, but really didn't have a lot of golf function to go along with that. So part of the goals were to incorporate natural resource enhancements with all of the projects out there. And like the needs that were addressed, try to provide flood storage, which would also improve drainage. And part of this is really directing that flooding to non-course areas. Make sure the course remains as playable as possible, but give that water somewhere to go. Establish the wetland buffers, which would help with water quality, manage invasive species, convert some of those turf areas to prairie where the space was available, restore and establish Oak Savanna, and then restore or create wetlands. And here's what that looks like. So this is on the Academy 9. It's an area where there was some former wetland that was expanded to create additional flood storage, try to alleviate some of those flooding issues. This is on the main course, and in the center of the picture, it's kind of a lighter green, but it's one of the borrow areas that lies between a couple of fairways that was brought down to provide flood storage. On the main course, we didn't add a lot of storage, but we moved it around in a way that ensures that the course remains more playable than it was previously, so we're giving it somewhere to go. I do note in this picture, and I picked it intentionally, there's a lot of black specks that are on there. It's feeding time. The birds like to follow the cedar around, so some of that native seed mix was carried south afterwards, but it's always interesting on how Mother Nature finds a way. We certainly wanted to establish wetland buffers. This is one of the areas that was more of a regulatory requirement, but we wanted to ensure we've got some space from the utilized areas to the wetlands to make sure we're meeting some of those water quality concerns. And then we, in particular, on the Academy 9 was to restore some Oak Savanna areas. Historically, a lot of this area was more of an Oak Savanna, very large mature trees with a prairie understory. Over time, they've been filled in with smaller trees. Buckthorn is an issue. This is an area that I say restoration because we've gone through there, removed the buckthorn, removed some of the smaller trees, and you can see through to the other side. This is in progress, but you can see more of where that might turn to and be somewhat of an amenity. Within the main course, we also wanted to establish Oak Savanna. So in this photo here, you can see that yellow color is the cover crop that we use for erosion control, but where that taller vegetation is some of our native prairie, and then you can see the white markers that are on there around the trunks of the oak trees that have been planted. So we really want to go between, restoring Oak Savanna where we have it historically present, and then setting the mark so that we can get that trajectory and have additional Oak Savanna in the future by getting those started now, and then trying to manage towards that. We also had some opportunity to restore native prairie. This is on the Academy 9. If you play the hole coming down off of the hill, this remnant limestone wall that was in there. It's hard to see in the photo, but we were surprised when we were out there. We've got this wonderful bur oak tree, and on the hill behind it was actually native prairie that was there that was just obscured. We kind of discovered it when we started clearing trees. So there are portions here that have just been waiting for the opportunity to come back. And then we have a lot of areas where we're actually establishing native prairie and in part reducing turf. So we've got this sign that, native plants live here. We're intending for these areas to be this way. Same on the main course, areas between fairways. It's kind of behind that tamarack tree, and it's also been mowed, but we've got these large areas of prairie that have been planted and are being maintained specifically for that purpose. And city staff with the watershed have also looked at educational opportunities. So particularly on the Academy 9, there's a number of placards and information that's out there that helps explain, this is intentional, this is why we do it. And, if you're waiting for that group ahead of you, pick up something along the way while you're out there as well, which is a great opportunity that a lot of places don't utilize, but it's a great resource to have. So as far as the accomplishments, a lot has been achieved for both projects. If we look at just a comparison on the Academy 9 from pre-project to what we have in 2018, we've expanded the ponding area for flood control. We have 2 areas where we've managed for Oak Savanna. We've added a wetland, and then we've added prairie in a number of locations. If we look up what's been accomplished just for the Academy 9, the biggest thing on here is really flood storage. Pre-project, we had 2.1 acre feet. Acre feet is 1 foot of water over an acre of area. With the enhancements out there moving it around, we've added 7.7 acres. It's a really large benefit just from a flood management. From the maintained turf, even though we've kept the same number of holes and expanded the footprint, we actually have 8 acres less turf with the current project than we had previously. The Oak Savanna through restoration has added 6.2 acres, and we have 7.4 acres of native prairie. These are not small numbers for a small course. This is a pretty significant achievement. On the main course, it's a little harder because of the size of it to fit, but this is one of the exhibits from the permit application and the plan set. You can certainly see the courses and areas of green on here. The blue areas are existing wetland throughout. Next to the wetland, we've got yellow indicating where the wetland buffers would be located. What I really want to draw attention to on this one is kind of that, I guess it's a light green stippled habitat indicator that's out there that shows all the areas of Oak Savanna and native prairie that are interwoven throughout the site. They provide spatial separation between the fairways, but it's really where we've added the most habitat to the project. And specific to that project, for the changes that are out there, we didn't have a lot of changes in flood storage, but what we did is we moved it around to accommodate it so that we are taking advantage of the course as much as we can. The wetland buffer, we have 18.22 acres. That's above and beyond what was required by the watershed. All of the wetlands that are out there are fully buffered to the extent that they need to be, and then some. And overall, we've added 29.77 acres of prairie and oak savanna, none of which was required. That was all elective in making it part of the course. We also did have some wetland impacts and some mitigation out there. Both areas did have unavoidable impacts, relatively small given the size of the projects, with 0.11 acres on the Academy and 0.37 on the main course. The 9 Mile Creek watershed does regulate those, and they do require replacement on site. Thankfully, we have the space, so we have 2 mitigation sites that are proposed. For both of these, we did exceed the requirements. So the Academy has this area, which is pre-project, where we elected this would be a good spot to do some mitigation. That was graded down and seeded, and this is what it looks like today. The amazing thing that I personally find on the small wetland for the Academy course is the upland buffer that was planted out there is about as diverse and full of wonderful native plants as you could find anywhere, even though it's a fraction of an acre in size. Part of that was the decision to not just seed it, but actually plant plugs of live plants out there and try to get these areas going faster. And it's really been a remarkable area, and it's been fantastic for years now. The main course, we took a little bit of a different approach. In the reconstruction of the course, it was determined that hole 25 wasn't needed any longer. For those of you that played it previously, that was the island green, kind of down in the southern corner. So when that became available, we took out the island, filled in the open water area around it, and flattened out the area like we see here during construction. With very little time, it got very, very wet. And today we've got a large wetland with a buffer around it as well. For those of you that have played it, this is unrecognizable from former hole 25 and has really been incorporated kind of in that corner of the course. So from a wetland standpoint, the Academy course met all of its obligations. Small impact, we've doubled the area, established a buffer. The buffer is well above and beyond what's required. The main course had a small impact as well, but the opportunity to go above and beyond was present. So even though we have 0.37 acres of impact, we've set aside 7.65 acres of land to make up for that, whether that's wetland or the adjacent buffer. So all these areas are part of ongoing monitoring and maintenance. The natural areas are managed in part through contractor obligations. Staff are doing some of the maintenance, and then there's third parties that are involved to ensure that these stay healthy and as intended. There is annual monitoring to track progress and guide that maintenance, and then there are some regulatory requirements, particularly for the wetlands, where we do have to submit annual reports to make sure we're meeting all of our success criteria. Overall, the city has really incorporated a lot of natural resource enhancements out at Braemar. We think that these are good for the environment, but we think it also adds to the golfer's experience. They're not always overt, but they're present and really adds to the course in a way that I think is a good fit. They also provide a demonstration of what others can do and that educational opportunity of how you can work in natural resources without being a burden. And I do want to stress that the majority of enhancements are elective, or if they were required, they were exceeded. There's no doubt the city went well beyond what they could have done, still had a successful project, but took advantage of the opportunity. And I think there really is a source of pride out here for everything that was achieved. So one of the things I want to pass on tonight is part of our monitoring requirements is to demonstrate what's going on out at the site. And we certainly do that through a number of means of all the photographs I've shown you. But one thing I want to showcase, and we have this all set up to go through a website. So when we are sitting here in the office in winter and we turn in our reports, and it's under snow like it is this year, we have the option to send it in to the watershed or the Corps of Engineers, and say, well, here's the site from a view and angle that provides great clarity. So here's the mitigation site for the Academy 9 course. And you can clearly see, yep, photos are nice. The use of drone photography to highlight that is a great tool to make sure that we're really demonstrating and then capturing the progress of these sites over time. Here's the Academy course, for example. You can see that central wetlands have been expanded, just the contrast of color where we've got golf course amenities versus our natural areas. And these are intentionally brief for the purposes of the meeting here. We have our second mitigation site that, in order to really get a perspective of what's out there, being able to show it from, this view and angle and say, we've constructed it, here's our wetland, and show how it fits has been a very useful tool for documenting progress and then the regulatory requirements. It's certainly something we found very, very useful to have. And I'm intentionally going quickly here because I know you have a full agenda tonight. But I do want to say overall, when we look at the course, and I'll just, pause it here for the purposes, even in this view here, you can see, certainly there's a golf course, but you can see how well it fits in the landscape, the water features that are present, the areas of wetland that have been created, the wetland buffers, the Oak Savanna. You really have taken what could be a course that you've stuffed into an area, and certainly be a course to be proud of, but added these features that most courses don't do, and you really need to be acknowledging yourselves for that decision, the dividends that'll pay down the road for having a more sustainable course, the benefits to the community and the residents for thinking of the environmental components and really putting it all together. And that's really all I have for a formal presentation. But we can certainly take any questions or discuss other means of...
Any questions for Derek or comments? Member Brindle?
I do. So as we walk the course, every once in a while, there's like a corrugated pipe that's standing up vertically. Okay. And it's part of the drainage system, I think, maybe. Okay. So are those permanent? Will they always be there?
I'd have to ask Tom if there's any that are above ground. There certainly are some of the catch basins in the course, but as far as corrugated pipe above ground?
Not that I recall.
Yeah, they're white. I see them in the course, so.
White PVC?
Yeah, I guess it's white PVC, yeah.
It could be either marking boundaries of certain areas. The trees did have a PVC protector on the trunk. A couple of trees have died, so there might be a remnant of that pipe where the tree's no longer there, or they're dormant that way. Otherwise, any of the drainage features should be flush with the ground and shouldn't be exposed. There certainly is drainage out there to direct it, but if they're small and white, it's probably either an intentional boundary marker or something related to the trees.
All right, and then speaking of drainage, in the material, are there containers? Are there big cisterns that are sunk underground, or are these all wetland areas that are the containment areas?
Yep, these are all wetland areas. So the course has been shaped to try to provide lower spots for that water to go. It's both a combination of just a high water table and when we have flood events. So when we have a lot of wet years, we're trying to give that water someplace to be. We're keeping all of the water that falls on the course in the course. We're not sending it downstream faster or making it someone else's problem. We're keeping it here and keeping more here than there was before. So there isn't any direct areas that are designated for storage that would be an engineered structure or anything like that. It's all using the course itself or the existing wetlands out there.
All right, thank you.
Other comments? Member Fisher?
I don't have any particular questions, but I just want to sort of congratulate whoever came up with the idea of actually stopping for a moment and coming and reviewing what was done, because I think these decisions from a council perspective were made before, at least before I was on the council, and that would mean before Councilmember Anderson, and it's a lot of folks that had ideas and executed on those, and I think it is important to stop once in a while and reflect back and say, did that accomplish what we were trying to? And it certainly looks like it has. So thanks to everyone for doing that.
Yeah, and it's your congratulations and city staff. I mean, there's probably 100 people that have had their fingerprints on this one way or another and contributed something towards this. So, yes, absolutely.
You know, when you did the work over at the Academy 9, when you came into the golf course complex, it took 2-3 years for those wildflowers to grow into themselves, that area to kind of realize its potential. It's just been extraordinary for me as a person who spends time at Braemar in the summertime to see how quickly those wildflowers and grasses have really matured. And I can hardly wait to see it next year and the year after. When you think about a 3-year cycle for reaching maturation, I think it's going to be an extraordinary place. It already is, but I think it's going to be even more beautiful. And thank you, too, for all the civil engineering work that was done out there to enhance playability, because there's very, very few spots now where there's any moisture retained.
Well, that was the goal, to try to make it the best course we can and utilize the space. It's mentioned in the memo, but if you add up all the natural areas out here, we're between 30 and 40% of the course is in some natural condition, whether that's the wetlands, the wooded areas, or the prairie. You know, if you think about the footprint of it, and to be achieving 40% of that is not actual course, is striking. And I think that's a testament to the vision of utilizing these areas. And specific to the entryway, partly why we went with plugs rather than seating is to get that looking that way within a year and not 3 years of nursing it along. That was a conscious decision to invest a little bit more and kickstart that. So I appreciate that some of those things are noticed.
Oh, yeah. It's really, as I say, quite extraordinary. So
yeah, it's a great project.
Nicely done to the entire team.
Absolutely.
All right.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. All right. That completes the special recognitions and presentations portion of the agenda this evening. We've got 3 public hearing matters. Our Community Health Administrator, Jeff Brown, has the first matter. And we're going to hear from him about a piece of property over on Vernon Avenue that has some issues. Mr. Brown.
Oh, you got that.
And this is Resolution 2019-104, which is the potential ordering of a nuisance abatement order. Mr. Brown.
Okay, thanks, Mayor Hovland and members of the council. So this is a code enforcement item tonight. As Mayor mentioned, it's at 4362 Vernon Avenue. It's the last house in Edina on the north end of Vernon Avenue. Just as a review, this is the first bullet here is the code section that was cited in the enforcement. Basically, there's a lot of items stored on the property, a wide range of things, as you can see from the photos that were included in the packet. And then the item, or the part of the process that we're doing tonight, is that we need to have a public hearing before the city enforcement process moves forward for abatement on the property. So the part in red is what we're doing tonight. So as far as history of the process, we started this enforcement action in May, and have been working with the property owner over time to try to have voluntary compliance. It has been somewhat successful in some ways, but not to a place where we could say it is no longer a violation of code. Basically, there's accumulation of things, and then some things are sold, and then more things come on site, and then some things are sold. So it's kind of an intake, outtake thing with continuous accumulation. So now we're at this point of having a public hearing tonight to move forward with abatement. And then next steps would be, I would, after tonight, discuss with the property owner and see where the status is at this point. And if everything is great and there's no longer a violation, that would be the end of it. If not, I'd work with the property owner and a contractor to schedule an abatement of the property. And then what we do is we send the bill to the property owner. If that goes unpaid, then I would come back for a second public hearing to do an assessment on the property. So that's where we are right now, and I can take questions.
Questions for Mr. Brown? Member Anderson.
Thank you. Okay, just a question in general, in terms of process. It's pretty clear that there's a problem there that needs to be cleaned up. The property's in foreclosure. And so there's a sheriff's sale, I think, in January, I've got it right here, January 21st.
Mm-hmm.
So if we approve this and the city's going to pay it, then from January 21st, there will be a buyer on January 21st. Sometimes the lender will just acquire the property, satisfy it, and keep it in portfolio for a later sale. Often there's investors that step forward. The owner from that point in time has a 180-day right of redemption. So I guess the question is, if we spend the $4,400, if we spend the allocated dollars on this, can we assign that to next year's taxes? That's the operational question, I guess.
That's the mechanism. So if we move to that point of assessment, I work with assessing to put a temporary or like a preliminary, I forget the terminology, but a preliminary assessment to put a hold or a note on the property. Once the cleanup is done and we come back for the public hearing, then we continue with that assessment.
All right. The taxes become a priority lien, so we're first in line there in that event. As long as they get assigned to the taxes, I think we're on pretty solid ground. It needs to be fixed, for sure.
And that's not my, I don't know exactly the lien orders, but I guess I would assume that we would have.
We get a confirmation on that from Attorney Knudsen.
Yeah.
That is correct. We have priority.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Brown at this point in time? Is the homeowner here?
No.
All right. All right. This is a public hearing matter. I'm going to open this up for public inquiry or testimony. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to come forward and testify regarding this matter? Hearing nothing and seeing no one coming forward, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Got a motion second to close the public hearing on Resolution 2019-104, which requests a nuisance abatement order from staff. Any further discussion on closing the public hearing? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. I thought one of our residents must have communicated with Mr. Anderson as well, Member Anderson, noted the foreclosure and Lori Groats from our community, and her question, of course, was, I think, twofold. One was, if we spend the money to do this, are we going to be in a secondary position to the mortgage holder? And the answer is no, we'd be in the primary position. But the second question, I think, was a timing issue. So if we approve this tonight, is there some wisdom in waiting to see how the sale goes, and depending on who the purchaser is, the timing of their cleanup? There's a redemption period involved here. I wouldn't want to let it go 180 days. There's neighbors that live around this property. But nonetheless, it might be somewhat prudent to wait and see what happens after the sheriff's sale in terms of who's the buyer. Is the buyer going to get it cleaned up for resale right away? Or are they just going to sit there and wait out the 180-day redemption period? So I kind of leave that to your judgment, just having you recognize that issue is there. Maybe you knew it was there.
I did not. And actually, we've done that kind of in previous examples where we've worked with someone that was going to do some kind of a cleanup, and then there's a sale, and we've considered those factors. So that's definitely something I can talk to the property owner about. He has not talked to me about that.
I can certainly give you a copy of the mortgage foreclosure information that she sent to me, sure. and I think Member Anderson as well, and maybe some of the other council members. But it just seems to me that if this passes tonight, that it might be prudent to wait and see what happens at the sheriff's sale.
Definitely.
Okay. Well, is there a motion to adopt Resolution 2019-104, which would order the nuisance abatement called NA-19?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and second on Resolution 2019-104, which is the order regarding nuisance abatement on the property, the subject property on Vernon Avenue, which is, I don't have that address right in front of me, 4362 Vernon Avenue, Edina. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adopting the resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. And, all right, good. That completes one public hearing matter. We've got 2 more to go. Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you.
And we've got a request for new on-sale intoxicating and Sunday sale liquor licenses for the LTF club operations. And Ms. Allison has this matter, our city clerk.
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, LTF Club Operations Company Incorporated applied for 2 liquor licenses for the new Lifetime Fitness at 250 Southdale Center. There are 2 restaurants where alcohol will be served, Rare on the 1st floor and Poolside Bistro on the 4th floor. Because the restaurants are not compact and contiguous as required by state statute, 2 separate licenses had to be issued. Staff reviewed the applications and they comply with city code requirements. Additionally, the owners / partners passed a background check that was conducted by our police department. And staff is recommending approval. And standing in front of us tonight are Mr. Sean Severson, Club General Manager, and Mr. Herb Shatlis, Club Restaurant Manager, and Leslie, can't remember your last name, I apologize. Sawatsi, who are available to take any questions that you may have of them. And at this time, I will stand for any questions you may have for me.
All right, good. Any questions for Clerk Allison at this point in time? This is a public hearing matter. Mr. Severson, I remember being together at the ribbon cutting. I thought you I enjoyed your comments as part of the opening statements, as I recall. So this is a public hearing matter. You're certainly welcome to make any comments you want to make. This is your opportunity to sell the club a little bit and talk a little bit about some of the activities going on there.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. I would
Yeah,
say that
Mr. Severson, you need to come either to the one of the side microphones. Identify yourself and give us your business address, please.
yeah, Sean Severson, General Manager, Lifetime Athletic Edina at Southdale. That's 250 Southdale Center. And so we would love the opportunity, obviously, to have an alcohol license to provide a social aspect. A lot of the different events that we do at the club are really tying both of those 2 things together, a health aspect from a physical perspective, and then also some sort of social aspect, which is tied to some various aspects of alcohol. Having some experience in this in a previous club that we also had the opportunity to have alcohol at, tying the 2 together creates a great social aspect, creates very strong community, and I would say the apprehension that people may have in a situation tied to people overindulging in a situation where alcohol is present. In the 4 years that I had at a previous club, it was on one hand were the situations where we had to deal with anything that got out of hand from that perspective. So our members overall do a great job of really monitoring that and just making it something that's more of a social and creating community connection amongst the customers.
Okay, good. Mr. Shatliff, did you want to make any comment at all, or all right, or Ms. Solowski? No? No, just here. All right, okay, good. Well, thanks for the support. So if you guys stand by, this is a public hearing matter. I'm going to open it up for any further public testimony. There may be folks in the audience that wish to comment. Is anyone in the audience that wishes to come forward and comment regarding the proposed issuance of these 2 on-sale intoxicating liquor licenses to the Lifetime Fitness operation? All right, seeing no one coming forward, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
We got a motion second to close the public hearing in this matter. And next, is there a motion to approve the 2 new on-sale intoxicating and Sunday sale liquor licenses for LTF Club Operations Company, Inc. for 2 restaurants located at the Lifetime Fitness facility at Southdale. The address is 250 Southdale Center. Suite 101 is the Rare Restaurant operation. Suite 401 is the Poolside Bistro. Both need a license due to their separate nature. Is there a motion to adopt that resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Is there a motion second to adopt the, or to approve the issuance of those 2 liquor licenses as stated? Any further discussion?
Could I just make
Yes.
one comment? I personally inspected both this weekend. I know I toured the club with my son, and it's truly spectacular, and I think a great addition to our community.
And I understand you bought your son a 1-month membership?
1 month. He's back from college for 1 month, and he's pretty much taken up residence over there, so it's he's enjoying it.
Yeah. So if you see somebody walking around that's real husky, that looks like a baseball player, that's his son home from college. All right. We got a motion second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of issuing these 2 licenses, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you, folks, for coming in this evening. Thank you. See you again sometime, Mr. Severson, and you folks as well. Good luck with everything over there. It's just it's a wonderful addition to our community, and I know people are really enjoying it. There were hundreds of people there that night of the grand opening, and I hear nothing changed. As you know, the membership sold out now, Mr. Severson, I heard.
Well, not sold out.
Why don't you come back up here so we get you recorded here? This is your opportunity for a sales pitch.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're certainly not sold out, but I would say the progress on the membership drive is certainly catching wind, and I would say, again, the community has done a fantastic job of supporting it, and we're humbled by that and just excited to be part of the community and support the overall community and the residents.
Good. And do you have any, when you're the overall general manager, are you in charge of lifetime work as well?
Correct.
And how is that doing so far?
Yeah, fantastic. Since opening, as you can imagine, that caught another wind of people that get to walk into the space and see it and feel it. And so really the filling of those spaces has moved very favorably since the grand opening, too.
Good.
Thank you.
Well, again, congratulations, and
thank you so
welcome
much.
to Edina.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, well, the last public hearing matter we have this evening involves something that we dealt with at the HRA at our last meeting, which also has to be dealt with by the City Council, and Stephanie Hawkinson, our Affordable Housing Development Manager, has this matter. Ms. Hawkinson, welcome.
Good evening, City Council members. Tonight you are holding a public hearing to make a determination on whether to create the Amundsen Avenue TIF District and modify the Southdale 2 TIF plan. A lot of this will be repetitive for you, but maybe not for some in the audience who may want to testify. The purpose of Modification 3 to the TIF plan for the Southdale 2 TIF District is solely to enable the use of incremental taxes collected from the TIF district to acquire designated property for affordable housing purposes. There are no changes proposed to the objectives, geographical area, budget, debt, or tax retention already approved for the TIF district. The specific modifications to the TIF plan are shown in bold print throughout the document that you received. Edina has used TIF for more than 30 years. Past projects include 50th and France, Edinburgh Park, Centennial Lakes, Grandview, and Southdale. Currently, there are 8 active TIF districts, the largest of which, Southdale 2, terminates in 2 years. With Southdale, with that district, 3.46% of the city's gross tax base is captured within a TIF district. As you can see, and it was mentioned, highlighted at the HRA meeting as well. Sorry about that. As mentioned, in order to use the Southdale 2 TIF pooled funds, we must create a TIF district and modify the plan, even if a new increment is never captured. This step must be undertaken to use what cash we have on hand. There are 2 types of TIF pooled funds, special legislation pooling and regular residential pooling. As we've talked about, the differences between the two relate to the percentage of units that need to be affordable, the time the units must remain affordable, and the area in which the geographical area in which it can be used. Special legislation is a little bit more restrictive. The regular residential TIF pooling can be used citywide, so there are some other differences. But either way, the TIF is used and TIF pooling is used because affordable housing projects, the rents are low and cannot leverage the debt needed in order to construct them. So we will work with our financial advisors and determine that the TIF is needed in order to make these projects feasible. The pooled funds are a great source to help fill the financing gap faced by affordable housing. Affordable housing cannot be developed, like I said, without it. The estimated pooling capacity of Southdale 2 TIF district is just over 15 million, projected out 2 years until the district is decertified. Of the 15 million, roughly half is governed by special legislation, and this will not be available for affordable housing if it's not committed by December 31st, 2021. Including in the resolution before you tonight, just under 8 million in combined pooled funds will remain if the Amundsen Avenue TIF district is created and the Southdale 2 TIF plan is modified for 2 affordable housing projects to move forward. We've already used, and pooling has been a great source to help support affordable housing. For example, 4100 West 76th benefited from these pooled funds. Amundsen Flats, which we're talking about tonight. 66 West. The preservation of 7008 Sandell, a NOAA property. And then the other one being discussed tonight, 4040 West 70th Street. So we use these pooled funds, this cash on hand, as it were, to support these projects. So we've all heard about Amundsen Avenue a lot, but just in case, I'll remind you again. The Edina Housing Foundation acquired 779 Amundsen in July 2018 through a competitive RFP process, selected MWF properties to develop the site into affordable housing. This past July, the HRA approved acquiring the property from the foundation for $1.3 million using Southdale 2 funds to help facilitate affordability. The HRA will then sell the property to MWF for $600,000 that will be returned to the TIF pool. MWF Properties will be developing 62 units of housing, 100% of which will be affordable. The property is located within the 70th and Cahill Small Area Plan near the border of the Southeast Edina redevelopment area. The Planning Commission determined that the proposed development complies with the comprehensive plan. As stated, to use Southdale 2 TIF special legislation pooled funds, a TIF district must be created. TIF and TIF pooling help fill financing gaps, but does not fully fund affordable housing developments. For example, with Amundsen Flats, the $700,000 that will be left in the project in TIF pooled funds amount to 4% of the total development cost. The majority of the finance is coming from low-income housing tax credit investor equity. So it's needed to fill a gap, but it is just in this particular project, it is just 4% of the $17 million project. The other project is that in addition to looking specifically at Amundsen Avenue TIF district and modifying the Southdale 2 TIF plan for Amundsen, the resolution before you pertains to modifying the Southdale 2 TIF plan to allow TIF pooling to be used for the acquisition of 4040 West 70th Street. Having the public engage in land acquisition in order to control the development process is fairly unique in Edina, but is commonly undertaken in other communities such as Minneapolis, St. Louis Park, Bloomington, Denver, Boulder, Highland Park, Illinois, etc. Governments have elected to do this because, unfortunately, the private market does not necessarily comply with the public development goals. We have the benefit of having the Housing Foundation who is nimble and can act within private markets timeline. The Housing Foundation entered into a purchase agreement for 4040 West 70th Street for the purpose of developing affordable senior housing. They believe the site is ideal for this use due to its location with access to transit, shopping, entertainment, and health resources. Once the property is acquired, the foundation will define the development parameters in keeping with the Greater Southdale Small Area Plan, oversee the request for proposal process to secure the developer, and hold the site through the developer's regulatory and approval process. The HRA will receive updates throughout the process, and the City Council will have final approval of the plans. The foundation will seek a developer who can comply with the following concepts, as stated: age-restricted housing, up to 118 units, adherence to the comp plan, energy efficiency, sustainability, and has demonstrated success in doing this type of project, long-term affordability, and long-term ownership. Senior housing is in demand in Edina. At Avidor, the 18 affordable units were the first to fill, and there's now a year-long waiting list. Through a preliminary market analysis completed by a developer of affordable senior housing, there's currently a vacancy rate of just over 1%. The lack of affordable options for seniors makes it challenging to fulfill the goal of aging in place. This is an opportunity to create up to 118 units, rather than just the 20% that would be required through our policy. So really briefly, what is TIF? Because that's what this public hearing is about after all. TIF is the ability to capture and utilize most of the increased local property tax revenue from a new development within a defined geographical area. It is using growth in the tax base from the new development to help fund eligible projects. The base taxes, the property taxes collected prior to the creation of the TIF district, continue to go to the taxing authorities. Just the increment, the change in taxes due to the development, are captured. However, the purpose of modification 3 to TIF plan, as I stated, is to use the incremental taxes to acquire the property. Edina has been conservative in the use of TIF relative to our neighbors. As stated previously, it's just right now just shy of 3.5 of Edina's property tax capacity is retained in TIF districts. This is another way of showing it. That little, our whole general tax capacity is in green, and what's being in TIF is in gray. This slide wanted to show you on the left, the blue is what the current captured tax capacity is in the Southdale 2 TIF district. That goes away in 2 years. And so right now we've talked about the just shy of 3.5% of our capacities in the TIF district. After Southdale is no longer decertified, 2.5% of our tax capacity is estimated to be in TIF districts. So it will go down once Southdale is decertified. And this does include the projects that are being discussed. So the use of TIF pooled funds requires that properties remain affordable for 20 years of using regular residential pooling or 25 years if using special legislative pooling. For Amundsen Flats, we're expecting a 40-year affordability period. This does not mean that the TIF district will remain in place for that long. Rather, depending on whether or not you want to capture the increment to support affordable housing developments, the district could be decertified at any time. The increment generated by Amundsen Flats is expected to be $1.15 million. We'll have this number calculated for 4040 West 70th once a development proposal is in place. Both Nick Anhut and I are here for questions, if you have any.
Good. Questions for Manager Hawkinson or Mr. Anhut? Thanks for being here this evening. We went through this at the HRA the other morning, and I think since all of the council sits as the membership of the HRA, we're pretty familiar with the issues. Does anybody have any comments or questions?
I have one, and
Member
that
Brindle?
is, it's a question that has been nagging at me, and I just haven't asked it. So regarding 4040 West 70th, why age restriction? Why not open that building to the market? It is located near jobs and transit. It's walkable, it's bikeable. So why restrict it to seniors?
Mayor, council members, there's a couple reasons, and with the different members of the foundation, we do have a couple representatives here. They may have their own reasons. Two of them were our 2 tax credit projects that were approved this year and are the most recent since 66 West were family housing. They're workforce family housing. Most of the phone calls I get are from seniors. So that's one reason, is that since we had 2 underway, this is our 3rd project, there is a general demand in the region for senior housing. And when you restrict it when it is age restricted, seniors then are not competing time-wise, because there's usually a rush on these affordable units. They're not competing against the general population, because only certain people of greater than, whether it's 55 or 62, can actually apply for those units. So it cuts down on the competition of those units than if it were general occupancy. Also, this site has seen its share of challenges in getting redeveloped. And there was the idea that there conceivably would be less traffic, and just generally speaking, the concerns over just noise and people, too much density in that area, and this we thought would alleviate some of those concerns.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for Ms. Hawkinson? This is a public hearing matter. If you stand by,
okay,
and we'll have folks come up and testify. I'm opening the matter up for public testimony. You'll have 3 minutes for your testimony. You'll get a, yes ma'am. You'll get a yellow warning light when you've got 30 seconds left, and then you should be wrapping up your comments. And Ellen.
I'm Ellen Skosbuck. Do I have to say my address again?
You haven't moved in the last hour and a half?
No. I wanted to comment on the question of age restriction on affordable housing that was brought up by Council Brindle, and it is true that there is demand for affordable housing for seniors. What hasn't been mentioned is that there is demand for affordable housing for young disabled people, and it's very hard for young disabled people to find housing if they're not able to work enough to make enough to live in market rate housing. Young disabled people usually are unable to secure a spot in senior restricted housing. Most age restricted housing will not make exceptions for disabled young adults. And this makes it very hard for disabled young adults to live in the community, as is encouraged by the Olmstead Act. And it doesn't leave a lot of options for those people. So I guess my comment is maybe something different from age restriction and seniors only would be more inclusive of the people who are also in need of affordable housing.
All right, thank you. Anyone else wish to testify regarding this matter? All right, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Is there a second? We've got a motion second to close the public hearing. Any further discussion? All those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. I don't know, Ms. Hawkinson, or if you want to address the, I think, legitimate concern that we've had expressed about housing for young disabled folks that reaches their affordability point. I know we looked at this several years ago before you came here. There was a proposal to build a building next to the Southdale Y that was going to be solely for folks with disabilities, and that didn't come to fruition, but nonetheless, something certainly to think about, whether it's this project or some other project. Your thoughts?
Mayor, council members, indeed. I mean, there is a massive need for affordable housing at all depths of affordability. If the world were my oyster, I mean, yes, there's for deeply affordable 30% of AMI there. We have met with some communities that are interested in building affordable housing for young adults with disabilities. There's needs for every slice of society. What we could explore, and I would have to look closely at the different funding sources, and when we talk to developers, is the possibility, and I have heard that there's mixed rationale about putting young people with disabilities into a age-restricted building as well, because it's two different populations, but in some cases it could work. I mean, I think that's something that could be explored.
Good. I don't know if anybody from the foundation wants to comment on their thoughts on age-restricted housing at this location, but
Jerry Gilligan, 6608 Mohawk Trail, member of the foundation board. We view this as a need for senior housing. We view this as a good location for it. And with these other two projects going in with our more family, that we think this is a good use at this site.
all right, good. Any questions for Mr. Gilligan or the other foundation members? No. Thank you, Mr. Gilligan. All right. This passed through the HRA. The resolution 2019-116 would establish the Amundsen Avenue Tax Increment Financing District and modify the Southdale 2 Tax Increment Financing Plan to accommodate the items that Ms. Hawkinson discussed. Is there a motion to approve Resolution 2019-116 establishing the Amundsen Avenue TIF District and modifying the Southdale 2 TIF Plan as described?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
We've got a motion second to adopt Resolution 2019-116 as described. Any further discussion? Member Anderson?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I would just throw out quickly, I've done senior housing with a component of developmental needs and handicap. It really kind of fell in relationship to the zoning that was available there. With New Hope, that was an R5 zoning, which gave you 80-20. So it's something like that could be done. It's something to consider. We're not approving the project tonight.
That's right.
We're approving the concept. But down the road, it's possible to incorporate a certain number, and not necessarily only young people. It's adults with disabilities, I think, is the way I'd probably look at it. And oftentimes that can be MS patients, we see that very often, but also other types of issues. So just something to consider down the road.
Yeah,
it can be done.
I think the inference from Ms. Hawkinson was that she would visit with the foundation about it and discuss that as a possibility as we look at this site. Any further discussion regarding the resolution as proposed, 2019-116? All those in favor of adopting the resolution say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. All right, very good. Thank you, everybody. And folks, yeah, you're certainly welcome to, you don't have to hang with us the rest of the night. All right, we're going to move on to reports and recommendations. And the first matter we have this evening in that portion of the agenda was a proposed resolution 2019-119, which supports refugee resettlement in the city of Edina, is the way it's characterized. And Manager Neal, you have this matter, and then I had, based on reviewing that resolution, I had crafted a different resolution that embodies some of the elements of the proposed resolution, but I thought I'd let you go first, and I can talk about why I'm suggesting doing what I have in front of all of you this evening.
Sure. Thank you, Your Honor, and members of council. On September 26, 2019, President Trump signed Executive Order 1388, which was titled Enhancing State and Local Involvement in Refugee Resettlement. Essentially, this executive order directed cities, and more specifically counties, to make an affirmative statement about whether they wish to be included in the federal government's refugee resettlement actions in the future. And so you may have seen different deliberations around the country as county governments and some city governments are having this discussion. We first heard about this, I think it first kind of came into the council, maybe not individually, but as a group. We had a couple of folks raise this at your fall town hall meeting. I did ask our race and equity coordinator to research the issue. She prepared the initial resolution that was included in your packet tonight. We prepared it in the affirmative, anticipating that would probably be the direction of this council. But of course, it's your prerogative on how you wish to proceed with this action.
All right. Yeah, there's some slight variation on it, and the reason I recrafted it or edited it was because we had at our most recent Regional Council of Mayors meeting, we had Minnesota Council of Churches in attendance, and they talked about the resettlement issue. The executive order asked cities to correspond with either the federal government or the your legislators and also the county to discuss to indicate whether or not the city supported the resettlement of refugees. So as you pointed out, Manager Neal, on September 26, President Trump issued Executive Order 13888, which required state and local governments. It required both approvals, written consent to the federal government before refugees could be resettled in their jurisdiction. And this is this all emanates from a bill that was passed in 1980, which is the Refugees Admissions Program. It's been in existence for all of this time. And in our state, there are 5 resettlement agencies. There are 9 in the country. 5 of those resettlement agencies are located in Minnesota. And so it would be agencies like Lutheran Social Services and maybe Catholic Charities. And I don't have all the names, but the American Refugee Committee. All of those folks have been working with resettlement of refugees for years. Because the executive order had specific language that said both the state has to approve it and the local unit of government, identified by the executive order as the county had to approve it. We know that Governor Walz has indicated that Minnesota is welcoming the resettlement of refugees as it always has, while our original resolution indicated that Edina would be a welcoming place for refugees, really the issue I think we needed to address was in light of the state's approval, we needed to go to the county and ask the county to make sure that they approved it. So I did call our county commissioner, Jan Callison, and asked her, would it be appropriate if we sent a resolution in support of resettlement of refugees, as has historically been done in Minnesota? And when are you going to address this issue? She said they were going to address it at their first meeting in January. She expected an affirmative vote, and she said if your council determines that they want to send us a resolution or a letter indicating support for the resettlement, you're welcome to do so. So that was the reason I crafted my proposed resolution the way I did, that addressed sort of the missing component from the executive order, and that was to ask the county to also put their blessing on this so that resettlement could occur. And then I also put some language in there that I secured from the it was from the Minnesota Department of Human Services about the historic value of refugees and their contribution to the state of Minnesota historically from these programs. So mine is quite a bit longer. But it does, I think, appropriately touch on the legal requirements that are involved in requesting the county to affirmatively state that they support the resettlement of refugees through these various agencies that have historically engaged in partnering with local government on the resettlement of refugees into Minnesota and elsewhere around the country. So that was the reason I came up with this more comprehensive resolution. So having said that, I could stand for questions, or we can discuss either of the options. And if there's no discussion, I could move mine. I can move Resolution 2019-119, which is a resolution of support for approving refugee resettlement. Is there a second for that motion?
I would second that.
Okay. Would there be any further discussion?
I just want to make sure, because we have Resolution 2019-119 that is redlined. So it's the original that's been redlined to adapt to what you provided.
Well, there is.
Correct?
No, there's a red line and a clean in front of you. There should be a clean too.
Yeah, I've got a clean and a red line.
Yeah.
But the red line takes what was provided to us and adapts it to what you gave us, correct?
That's correct.
Correct.
Okay, so that is what we are asking about.
That's correct.
That's the motion you're asking for.
We have a motion and a second. That's
You're right,
what I'm
right,
asking
right,
passage
right.
on.
Okay, great.
Okay. Any further discussion?
No.
All those in favor of adopting Resolution 2019-119 as modified by the mayor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Okay. And then the other matter has been suggested for continuance. That's the Oak Lane development contract matter. Is there a motion to continue that matter, Resolution 2019-66, continue that matter to January 7, 2020?
So moved.
All right, we got a motion second to continue Resolution 2019-66 to our January 7, 2020 meeting. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor of continuing Resolution 2019-66 to January 7, 2020, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. We're on to correspondence and petitions. Manager Neal, anything that we need to be mindful of that's come in since
not that wasn't already in
we were
front of you.
seated on the dais? Okay. And then aviation noise update. Member Brindle, anything there?
Our next meeting is in January. So at our November meeting, the Noise Oversight Committee fine-tuned some recommendations resulting from the Egan letter. You might have heard me mention about the Egan letter about noise that Egan is experiencing. And so this is an example of how the Noise Oversight Committee works, and that is that we took the letter with all the points from Egan and formulated specific recommendations. Those were provided to the Metropolitan Airport Commission Board of Directors and approved. So that will go to the FAA for their consideration and response. So very excited about that, actually. The 2020 work plan includes a noise study that will take place in Edina. So we'll get a chance to find out what pockets of Edina, what kind of noise different pockets of Edina experience. So there will be some guidance provided on formulating that study, but that's in 2020.
Good. Manager Neal, any follow-on with that?
No, I don't have anything else.
All right. Mayor and council comments. Member Fisher, you want to lead us off? Not for me. Okay, thanks. Member Staunton?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only thing I wanted to mention was the Community Health Commission recommendation on flavored vaping products. I know they've made a recommendation about making some changes to our code. Where does that go from here? How would we handle that?
Typically, when we include an advisory communication from one of our boards and commissions back to you, it is meant to see if there's interest or support among council members to either add that to a work plan, or take some action based on that, based on their communication. So that's where it is at this point.
So I guess I would say to that there is for me, although I would also note some pending legislation from Congress, of all people actually passing legislation on the 21 age restriction. So I don't know how that dovetails with it, but I think this is a natural companion to our T21 approach, and certainly with everything in the news about the challenges of vaping and the enticement for young people with flavored products. I'd be supportive of figuring out a way to move forward on this.
Okay.
Good. I concur with that. Member Brindle.
Thank you. I have a couple of things. So the housing task force that the council put together to advise us on the types of housing that Edina needs going forward. One of the members resigned, and so there is an empty seat on what should be a 7-member board or 7-member task force. They have 1 year before they are set to complete their work. And I think it would be good to fill that vacant seat. So I guess I'd like to make a recommendation to my partners on the council that that we fill that vacant seat with someone who applied to be on the task force, and perhaps, I don't recall exactly, but I think we might have maybe identified an alternate or two, and get that seat filled. So I would ask you for your opinion.
Thoughts, Manager Neal?
Thank you, Your Honor. Councilmember Brindle and I had some discussion about this earlier this week. City staff are relying on the council's action from June 18th of earlier this year when you set up the task force. When you appointed the original members that evening, included in that appointment action was a statement that reads like this. In the case it is determined members can't serve, council has selected the following alternates in priority to fill the vacancy. So you created some alternates that could be placed. An open vacancy, however, will only be filled through the end of July. After July 31st, if an unscheduled vacancy opens, the task force will continue their work with the remaining members. So that's what we've been relying on. This is a council appointed task force, not a city manager appointed task force. So it's your prerogative about how you want to staff these task forces. I will tell you that the reason why we suggested that protocol to you in the first place is that once a task force kind of gets up and going, there are some downsides to adding new people to it. It can take you back a few steps, and we've been trying to keep this task force moving forward. So that's, we've had experience with this, and so based on that experience, that's where our staff recommendation comes from.
Member Sutton?
This is the first I've heard of it, so I'm not prepared to make any decision about it. I'd like to hear more about what's happening, and if there's a decision to make, then we can make a decision.
Member Fisher?
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment. This is really the first I've heard. And frankly, I'm just not sure what's happening with the task force. So I'd like to get a little bit more of an overview. And is it helpful for them to have another member right now? Or is it more helpful to, as you say, just keep charging ahead? So I wouldn't want to just make any rash judgment here tonight.
My understanding of the task force, and I think Councilmember Brindle may agree, is that they also want somebody to fill the seat. Is that
they
your?
Do.
Yeah, they want somebody to fill that seat. I told them no, based on the way that the task force was organized and established, and so that's sort of where we are at the moment.
Well, I guess I would go back to the task force with what you have highlighted there and say this is how the task force was formed, and this is what the council agreed to at that time, because frankly I forgot about it. And so if that, I mean, that's how we formed it, and that's what we said we were going to do. It's hard to go back on that.
Well, again, I mean, this is the first I'm hearing it. I don't want to make a decision about what to do until I can learn more about it.
You're not suggesting a decision be made tonight.
No, I just wanted to hear what anybody had to say, so. All right.
Member Anderson.
Yeah, thank you. The only thing I'd add to it is that the original composition of the task force was for a year, and we've extended that for some time. So I also agree strongly that it's very difficult to add somebody to the mix and have them catch up and understand the nature of the conversations which have occurred in the body of work that precedes them joining. So but that deadline of August, I believe, was based on a year. So, but we really have a full year still left to work there.
Yep.
A consideration.
All right. Well, thank you.
Have there been any folks attending those meetings that are not members, that are up to speed?
Yeah, and we did have, when you created the task force, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, there were 4 alternates that you listed in priority to fill vacancies if they created vacancies during those opening couple of months. So there were some applicants that you thought enough of to put as alternatives but didn't appoint.
Okay. So have any of those alternative choices been attending any of these meetings just voluntarily?
Yeah.
So what's the preference of the council on this? Hear from the chair of the Housing Task Force and deal with this another day?
I'd just like to put this off till another day so we can learn more about it.
Okay. Next meeting?
We'll gather that. We'll gather that opinion, the 2 opinions from the co-chairs, and bring those back to you at the next meeting.
Okay.
Good. I have one more thing, and that is trash containers. They are more and more appearing outside the garage, in front of the house, in full view of the street. So I would like to read a couple of sentences from Ordinance 20-125 to remind people containers containers kept outside shall be kept in such a manner. Am I reading the non-residential?
Maybe.
Maybe I am. All right.
It's supposed to keep them on the side of the house or the garage.
It's supposed to
as I
keep them
recall.
within 5 feet of the dwelling, out of view. No?
We changed that. Yeah. The council made an ordinance change to make that change. And there are some residents who are not happy with that, but I would say most people have been okay.
All right, so
but it doesn't let you have it up by the curbside for 2 weeks. I mean, it's supposed to be back by the house somewhere, as I recall.
Right.
You remember?
back by the house, but visible from the street?
Yep. That was okay if it was visible.
Yep.
I remember we made that determination.
I think we need to rethink that. It just looks junky. So we should rethink it.
Okay. Well, why don't you put yours away then?
Ours are away. You are a clever, just a clever person.
Member Anderson.
Thank you. It's our last time together this year. And I did, so it's my first year here. And so looking back on it, a couple of things that I would note is I haven't been able to appreciate the value of late night television until I got here. And so I'm able to catch up on late night stuff. Second is I've really appreciated the professional demeanor of this body. It's notable. There are high-stress items that come forward. People become concerned. We attach emotion to many of them. And yet, almost 100% of the time, this group of people has been able to be very stable and answer professionally and act in the best interests of the community. And I appreciate that. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you for those comments. Include yourself in that.
Back at you.
Yeah. Just a couple quick things. Last Saturday, the 14th, attended the mid-afternoon concert of the Edina Chorale, one of the finest they've put on in years, I think, over at Calvary Church on France Avenue, 5300 block over there. It was a great sanctuary setting for them. Yeah, it's really beautiful, beautiful concert. So congratulations, everybody, on the Edina Chorale. Monday morning, I went to a session down at the Fed on how strategic investments in transportation forge regions, and that was interesting. Both things I knew already about what's going on in our region, but also there were 2 folks there, one from what they call the Indy Chamber in Indianapolis, and then also the Wasatch Front, a fellow from the Salt Lake City area. We talked about transportation efforts they're making out there. And then tomorrow, let's see, is TAB, Thursday night is the Mayor Gene Winstead retirement event over in Bloomington. Manager Neal and I will be attending that. And if you think of some good things that I can use against Mayor Winstead, in terms of a light roasting material, I'd like to get it from you. I'm thinking hard about what to say about him.
Dewtown video of him dancing to the
Jennifer, there, we forgot about that.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, it does. Yeah. That door swings both ways. Yes, it does.
Well, I guess I could go down with him. But that might be worth sending over there, and I'll figure out something to say about Dewtown. And then Saturday is Walk with the Mayor over at the Southdale Center, and we meet at the Caribou Kiosk. So if anybody wants to come over and walk with the Mayor at 9 o'clock on Saturday morning, feel free to join us. And that's it for me. Manager Neal.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have two things tonight. First is National League of Cities. The annual Congressional Cities Conference will be March 7 through 11 this year, and we are getting ready. It's actually pre-registration opens up pretty soon, so we would like to know how many, or which of you would like to go. Our council policy in even-numbered years is that 3 of you go. In odd-numbered years, it's that all 5 of you go. So we need, if there's 3 of you that want to go and can go, then that's an easy call. But if there's more, we need to have some discussion about how do we make that decision. But
what are the dates for that again?
March 7th through the 11th. 7th is the Saturday the 7th, and through Wednesday the 11th. So okay. I don't have to know tonight.
No, that's one of your points you wanted to cover.
Right. I don't have to know tonight, but I do need to know soon. The other one is regarding Oak Lane. We've continued to have discussion with the Oak Lane folks, both Lance and Sarah Elliott, and the neighbors, who have been discussing opportunities to potentially purchase the outlot from Lance and Sarah. And we've had several meetings since the last time the council met, including one yesterday with all parties together in the same room. Some of the concerns that they have are just how do they arrive at the right number. They're very concerned or interested in the council's approach to how you would vacate the right-of-way that would be part of this discussion as well. There also is some interest in whether or not we could be involved in special assessing this project. So if they were going to use private money, if they could raise enough private money around the outlot, would the city be involved in potentially leading the purchase and then special assessing the cost of that back to residents who are either impacted or interested in bearing some of the cost. And we have talked with the city attorney about that, and that is a mechanism that we could use if we wanted to be involved in sort of aggregating the money to make this happen. So the right-of-way issue is clearly an issue that the council is going to be asked to weigh in on. The neighbors believe that they can bring more money to the table if the right-of-way could be part of the kind of the purchase and transaction at the time when this happens. The special assessment piece, I think staff are knowledgeable enough about how to do that and to make that happen, and we can do that. So that is kind of the status of those discussions. They're ongoing. We hope that we could have something more definite for you tonight, but certainly we'll keep talking over the holidays here and potentially have something to share with you more definite at the first meeting in January.
Okay, good. I just found one document I meant to circulate earlier, and just for your own personal reference. This deals with the matter we heard a couple weeks ago over on Prospect Knolls and the projected special assessment. One of our residents, Hamid Motadi, who lives in the Prospect Knolls neighborhood, came up with some ideas on financing road reconstruction projects, and just circulate that to all of you as food for thought. And I haven't studied any of these ideas myself yet, but at least I want to make sure that you all had it in your hands so you could see at least one resident's ideas about how these matters could potentially be funded. So that's it for me. Did Manager Niels prompt any other thoughts for anybody, or anything else come to mind? All right, we'll stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody, and have a great holiday season.